My name is Rachel Bennett, and the night my entire extended family finally said the quiet part out loud happened on Christmas Eve, under my own string lights, with cinnamon candles burning and a tray of store-bought sugar cookies sweating on the counter. I was standing at the kitchen island, carving ham the way my dad taught me when I was a kid, slow, neat slices, because if you do it right, it feels like control. That's when my aunt's voice cut through the music like a snapped rubber band. "Rachel," she said, loud enough for the living room to hear. "Since you're the sponsor, you're paying for the new apartment deposit too. Don't do that American thing, where you pretend you don't have money." My knife stopped mid-slice. Across my open-concept living room, my cousins were sprawled on my couch like it belonged to them. One had his shoes up on my throw blanket cream, not washable. My uncle was laughing at something on his phone, his belly jiggling under a dress shirt he'd worn 3 days in a row. Someone had set a sweaty can of soda right on my coffee table, leaving a perfect ring on the wood. And my mum, my own mother, was smiling politely like this was all normal, as if I hadn't spent the last 2 years dragging half my family across an ocean, one visa packet at a time, one late-night ride to a job interview at a time, one "I'll cover it for now" at a time. My aunt stepped closer, her perfume sharp and floral. She tapped her acrylic nails against the granite and tilted her head, like she was talking to a child who didn't understand math. "You brought us here," she said, "so you don't get to be tired now." The living room went quiet in that way. Families get quiet when they're about to enjoy a fight they swear they hate. I looked down at the ham, at my hands, at the thin sheen of grease on my fingers, and felt something inside me shift, like a lock clicking into place, because it wasn't the request. It was the assumption. It was the way they said sponsor, like it meant property. And then my cousin Marlon, 28 years old, built like he lived at the gym, unemployed by choice, grinned and said the line that made my vision narrow. "Come on," he said. "You're basically our walking cash machine. That's your role." My aunt laughed. My uncle laughed. Even my mum gave a little nervous chuckle, like she didn't want to pick a side. Walking cash machine. On Christmas Eve, in my house, with my name on the mortgage, my name on the deed, and my signature, my legal promise, on more immigration paperwork than I could even count anymore. I set the knife down gently, too gently, the kind of gentle that scares people who know you. And I said, "Everyone put your phones down." They blinked at me like I'd spoken a different language. I reached into the drawer beside the oven, the one where I keep measuring spoons and batteries and the extra Sharpies, and pulled out a manila folder so thick it barely fit. Then I slid it onto the counter with a sound that felt like thunder in my ribs. Inside were copies of everything I'd ever signed. Paid, forwarded, guaranteed, or rescued. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just looked at my aunt and said, "I want you to repeat what you just called me." She leaned back, offended now that I wasn't smiling. "Don't be dramatic, Rachel." "Oh, I'm not," I said. "I'm finally being accurate." And that was the moment the Christmas lights in my window stopped feeling cozy and started feeling like a spotlight. 2 years earlier, I'd believed in the version of family that lives inside your head when you're the first one to make it. I was born in the U.S., Cleveland, Ohio. My parents came here young, worked themselves raw, and raised me with the kind of love that comes with pressure stitched into it. Be grateful. Be successful. Don't forget where you came from. I did what daughters like me do. I overachieved. By 32, I was a project manager at a healthcare tech company, married to my job more than any man, with a tidy townhouse in a quiet suburb, a reliable Toyota, and a credit score I guarded like a secret. I was also the only one in my entire extended family who had stability that looked American. So, when my aunt called me crying about opportunity, when my uncle said his kids needed a future, when cousins messaged me late at night with heart emojis and long paragraphs about dreams, I listened. At first it was one cousin, then 2, then an aunt, then, just for a little while, then, only until we find our feet. I learned new words: petition, affidavit, biometrics, adjustment, work authorization. I learned which government websites crashed at midnight, which fees increased without warning, which forms needed original ink signatures instead of scans, and I learned the most dangerous sentence in the world: "Rachel will handle it." When you sponsor certain family members, you sign an affidavit of support, a promise that says, essentially, if they can't support themselves, you might be on the hook. It's not a cute symbolic thing. It's real. It's enforceable. In some situations, it lasts until very specific conditions are met, like citizenship or enough work history. I understood that. What I didn't understand was how quickly people confuse help with ownership. The first winter, I let my aunt and uncle stay in my guest room. It was supposed to be 6 weeks. It became 6 months. They took over my kitchen. They criticized how I cooked. They asked why my Christmas tree was so small and why I didn't buy the expensive ornaments like the neighbors. My cousin Marlon moved in temporarily too. He slept until noon, ate my groceries, and left protein powder dust on my counter like he paid rent. I didn't just give them a place to sleep. I became a full-service landing pad. I drove them to the DMV. I taught them how to use self-checkout at Target. I explained why you can't hand the cashier a $100 bill for a $2 item at 10 p.m. and act offended. I got them prepaid phones, then upgraded them to a family plan, because it was cheaper for everyone. I added my aunt to my health insurance during open enrollment because she didn't have coverage yet, and I couldn't sleep thinking about her getting sick. I helped build resumes. I hunted for jobs. I called friends. I sat in the parking lot outside a warehouse while my uncle interviewed for a night shift, whispering, "You can do this," like I was his life coach. When someone needed a security deposit, I paid it and told myself it was an investment in peace. When someone needed a car, I co-signed because just until we build credit. When my cousin wanted to start a small business, I paid for a laptop because he promised he'd repay me in 2 months. 2 months turned into business is slow. Slow turned into silence. And the whole time, my family praised me in public. Rachel is so generous. Rachel is such a blessing, while treating me in private like a resource that existed to be drained. The pattern was subtle at first, then it became tradition. Whenever anyone got stressed, they didn't ask, "How can we solve this?" They asked, "What can Rachel cover?" And I let it happen because I was terrified of being the villain in a story I'd worked so hard to be the hero of. Until Christmas, because Christmas doesn't just bring out nostalgia, it brings out entitlement like a rash. The escalation happened in small humiliations that piled up like unpaid bills. My aunt started telling people I was lucky I didn't have kids, because it meant I had extra money to help the family. My uncle told his friends I worked some office job and acted like I probably didn't do much. My cousins joked about my American loneliness and asked why I wasn't married yet, like a ring would make me more worthy of respect. The worst was how they talked about money like it was something I had stolen from the family by being born here. They'd say, "In America you all have it easy," while wearing coats I bought, driving a car I co-signed, using a phone line I paid for. I started noticing the math. Every month, I paid the family phone plan, the extra utilities from 3 more adults living in my home, groceries that disappeared faster than I could shop, gas from endless errands and job runs, insurance premiums that made my paycheck feel smaller, temporary loans that never came back. It wasn't just money. It was space in my brain. I'd be in meetings at work, presenting timelines and budgets, and my phone would buzz with, "Rachel, we need you." Quote, "Rachel, urgent." Rachel, don't ignore family. And it was never, "Hey, how are you?" Then the real line crossing arrived in the form of a lease. Marlon wanted an apartment with his girlfriend. 1 bedroom, nicer, complex, safe neighborhood, good vibes. He didn't have stable income. His girlfriend did gig work. The apartment required proof of earnings and good credit. So they said, "Just sign with us. It's not a big deal." I said no. The room changed temperature. My aunt's mouth tightened. My uncle's eyes hardened. My mum called later and said, "Rachel, don't embarrass us. You know you can do it." I told them, "I already co-signed a car. I'm not adding a lease." That's when my cousin messaged me, "If you don't help, you're the reason we fail." The guilt was so familiar it felt like home. But that night, I opened my banking app and stared at the number that represented my life, my savings, my safety, the tiny cushion I'd built with overtime and discipline. And I thought, They aren't building anything. They're building on me. Then came December, when everything gets expensive and emotional, and people start acting like they're starring in their own holiday movie. My aunt announced, without asking, that we were hosting Christmas Eve at my house. It makes sense, she said. You have the space. I swallowed my irritation and went into event planner mode. Because that's what I do. I solve problems even when I'm the problem being used. I bought the ham, the sides, the sparkling cider, the holiday plates. I cleaned. I decorated. I made it warm and pretty because I still wanted to believe my generosity could turn into gratitude if I tried hard enough. Then, 2 days before Christmas Eve, my uncle came home carrying a giant flat-screen TV box like a trophy. My heart dipped. Where did that come from? I asked. He smiled. Holiday sale. With what money? I asked, keeping my voice calm. He waved a hand. It's fine. We put it on credit. My stomach dropped. Whose credit? He didn't answer fast enough. I looked at Marlon. Marlon shrugged like a teenager who'd been caught in a lie. It was easier, he said. Your card was already saved on the Best Buy account. The blood rushed in my ears. My card was saved because I bought you a laptop, I said slowly. My aunt walked in like the referee of a fight she'd started. Rachel, don't make a big thing. It's Christmas. I stared at them and realized something terrifying. They had started treating my financial identity like a communal utility, like electricity, like water, like something you turn on and forget who pays. That night, I changed every password I could remember. I froze my credit. I removed payment methods from every shared app. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and my hands shaking. And I didn't tell anyone, because part of me still hoped I could fix it quietly. But Christmas Eve showed me that fixing it quietly was exactly how I'd ended up here. Back in my kitchen, under the Christmas lights, with the folder on the counter and my ham cooling like an abandoned peace offering. My aunt tried to dismiss me again. Rachel, stop this, she snapped. We're family. We don't do paperwork. I nodded once. You're right. Family doesn't usually need paperwork. I opened the folder and pulled out a printed spreadsheet. I do, I said. My cousin Marlon laughed. Look at her. She thinks she's the bank. No, I said, and I held up my phone. The bank thinks I'm the bank, because you all keep using my name like it's a coupon. My mum finally stood up from the living room, her face tight with panic. Rachel, she said softly. Not today. I looked at her. Really looked. My mother who raised me to be strong. My mother who told me not to let anyone walk on me. My mother who, the moment it was uncomfortable, wanted me to fold myself back into the shape that made everyone else comfortable. It's exactly today, I said. My aunt leaned forward, eyes sharp. So what? You're going to punish everyone because you're stressed? Don't act like a victim. We didn't force you. That made my chest burn, because she was right in the most manipulative way possible. No one held a gun to my head. They just held guilt. They just held family reputation. They just held the fear that if I said no, I'd become the selfish American daughter who forgot where she came from. Marlon stood up, swaggering like he owned my living room. If you can't afford it, just say that, he said. Don't pretend you're some kind of saint. I could feel every muscle in my body trying to protect the old version of me, the one who would apologize, smooth it over, offer to figure something out. Instead, I took a breath and said, here's what's happening. I pointed at the spreadsheet. This is every expense I've covered since you arrived. Housing, phone plan, insurance, deposits, car co-signing, loans, and anything you charge to my accounts. My uncle scoffed. You're counting? That's disgusting. Counting is how adults stay alive, I said. My aunt's voice went ugly. Wow, so this is what America did to you? Made you cold? Marlon smirked. Just admit it. You like having power over us. I stepped around the island and faced him directly. No, I said, quiet. I liked believing you would love me even if I stopped. The living room went still, and then my aunt said the cruelest thing she could think of. Don't be dramatic, she snapped. If you stop helping, walk out of your own hero fantasy. Nobody asked you to play savior, but you did sign the papers. You're responsible, so don't start acting like you can abandon us. If you refuse, you're not family, you're just selfish with a passport. My mum inhaled sharply like she'd been slapped. Marlon crossed his arms and added, "Yeah, if you're going to be stingy, then take your little Christmas tree and your fake kindness and keep it." There it was, the confrontation I'd been avoiding. Not just money, not just favors, my worth in their eyes. A cashier, a bridge, a machine. I turned and looked at my tree, small, simple, twinkling, the one they'd mocked for being sad, and something in me settled. I said, "Okay, one word, that's all." Then I picked up my phone and opened a note I'd written weeks ago in the middle of insomnia. I read it out loud, calmly, like a manager reading a termination script. Effective January 1st. I am removing everyone from my phone plan. I am cancelling the extra car insurance rider. I am ending the shared subscriptions. I am not co-signing anything else. I am not paying any more deposits. And you have 30 days to move out of my home. My aunt's face turned red. My uncle stood up so fast his chair scraped. My mum whispered, "Rachel." Marlon laughed again, but it sounded forced. "You can't just do that." "I can," I said. "I already checked." My aunt pointed a finger at my chest, like she wanted to poke the guilt back into me. "You think you can drop us and sleep at night? You think the law won't come for you?" I nodded. "That's what you're counting on." Then I reached into the folder and pulled out a business card. "Tomorrow morning," I said, "I'm meeting with an immigration attorney, because I don't play games with the law. I play with the truth." My uncle barked. "You're going to make us look like criminals?" "No," I said. "You did that yourself when you used my saved card to buy a TV." Marlon's grin vanished. My aunt's voice went shrill. "So you're kicking us out on Christmas?" I looked around at my decorated house. The garlands, the candles, the plates I'd bought, the food I'd cooked for people who called me an ATM. "I'm not kicking you out," I said. "I'm ending the arrangement where my life is everyone's emergency fund." My mum finally stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Rachel, please, just wait until after the holidays." I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't move, because I realized something. After the holidays was just another way of saying never. I put the attorney's card on the counter, right in front of my aunt, and I said, "You're welcome to stay for dinner, but the conversation is over." Marlon stared at me like he'd never seen me before. "Fine," he snapped, grabbing his jacket. "If you're going to be like this, don't expect us to respect you." I held his gaze. "I don't," I said. "I expect you to stop using me." He stepped closer, voice low and vicious, trying one last shove. "Then enjoy your lonely little American life," he said. "Because after tonight, don't call us when you realize you're nothing without family." The old Rachel would have flinched. This Rachel just nodded once. "Good," I said. "That sounds peaceful." He stormed out, slamming my front door hard enough to rattle the wreath. And for the first time in 2 years, my house felt like mine again. The next morning, while my relatives slept late and acted like they hadn't detonated Christmas Eve, I drove through grey Ohio slush to a small law office in a strip mall between a dentist and a dance studio. The attorney's name was Ellen Park. She had silver hair pulled into a neat bun and the calm posture of someone who has seen every version of human entitlement. I sat across from her, hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee I didn't even taste. And I told her everything. The visa packets, the affidavit of support, the housing, the loans, the TV charge to my saved card, the threats. I expected her to tell me I was trapped. Instead, she said, "You're not trapped. You're just tangled." Then she explained the part nobody in my family wanted to hear. Sponsorship doesn't mean I have to pay for luxuries. And it doesn't mean I have to let people live in my house forever. It means I have a legal obligation under specific circumstances. And there are boundaries I can set without breaking the law. She looked me dead in the eyes. "Your biggest risk," she said, "is continuing to behave like an unlimited resource, because then everyone will treat you like one." I swallowed. "So what do I do?" Ellen slid a yellow legal pad toward me and started listing steps like she was building a ladder out of my mess. 1. Stop co-signing. No leases. No loans. No cars. No. Just until. 2. Separate finances immediately. Remove saved payment methods. Change passwords. Freeze credit. 3. Written notice for housing. If they're living with me, I need to treat it like a legal tenancy, because the law doesn't care if someone is your cousin. 4. Document everything. Receipts, texts, payment history. 5. Understand the affidavit. If they try to claim support, I respond through legal channels, not through panic payments. Then she said something that made my eyes sting. You can love them, she said, and still refuse to be exploited. I walked out of her office with a folder of my own templates, timelines, a checklist, and a strange new feeling. Permission, not from her, from myself. The breaking point wasn't just the Christmas Eve fight. It was what happened when I started enforcing boundaries. Because the second people realize they can't control you anymore, they try to control the narrative. My aunt started calling relatives back home, crying and saying I'd turned evil. My uncle told people I was threatening to deport them, something I literally cannot do and would never do. Marlon posted a vague Facebook status about fake family and selfish people who forget where they come from, and half my extended relatives liked it, without asking me anything. My mum begged me to be the bigger person, and then, 3 days after Christmas, I got a letter in the mail from a collections company. My stomach dropped so hard I had to sit on the floor. The letter wasn't for me, but my address was listed as the contact, and the name was my cousin's girlfriend. I opened my laptop, ran a credit check, and felt my hands go cold. There were inquiries I didn't recognize. Not huge ones, not dramatic, but enough. They hadn't just treated me like an ATM. They'd started treating my identity like a shared household item. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened a spreadsheet. I created columns: date, vendor, amount, who requested, proof. Then I printed it, and I started building a file that wasn't emotional. It was factual. The next morning, I went to my bank and did something I should have done a year ago. I separated my life. New accounts, new cards, new PINs, two-factor authentication on everything. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I filed a dispute for anything questionable. And when my bank rep asked, gently, "Is everything okay at home?" I smiled politely and said, "I'm fixing a leak." Because that's what exploitation is. A leak. If you don't patch it, it drains you slowly until you wake up empty. My decision was simple, but not easy. I would stop being the landing pad, not by rage, not by revenge, by structure. I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a formal notice. 30 days. Move-out date. Expectations. I printed 2 copies and placed one in my aunt's room, one in my uncle's room, like this was any other tenant situation. Then I texted the family group chat. Starting January 1st, I'm removing everyone from my phone plan and ending all shared expenses. Please plan accordingly. I've included resources for local job placement, low-cost clinics, and financial counselling. I won't be discussing this further. My aunt came storming into my kitchen 5 minutes later, waving the notice like it was a personal insult. "You can't do this," she hissed. "This is humiliation." I didn't look up from my laptop. "It's clarity," I said. My uncle tried a different tactic, soft voice, fake gentleness. "Rachel," he said, "think about what people will say." I finally looked at him. "I have," I said, "and I'm okay with it." Marlon stepped forward, eyes hard. "You're really going to throw us out after everything?" he said. I nodded. "After everything I did, and everything you decided I owed you," he sneered. "So you're just cutting us off like we're trash?" I held my voice steady. "No," I said. "I'm cutting off the pipeline that lets you avoid responsibility." That's when my aunt's face twisted, and she said the line she thought would break me. "Fine," she spat. "Be your precious American self. But don't come crying when the government comes knocking and you're held accountable. You signed us in now, you're stuck. So stop acting like you're a victim and start paying what you owe." I took a breath. Then I reached into my folder and pulled out Ellen's summary page. Simple language, bullet points, boundaries. I slid it across the counter. "I know exactly what I signed," I said, "and I know exactly what you're trying to make it mean." Marlon slapped the paper away like it burned. My aunt stepped close, eyes glittering with anger. "If you want us gone," she said, voice shaking. Then look at me and say it. You don't care what happens to us. I met her star. I care, I said quietly. That's why I can't keep enabling this. Her mouth opened to scream again, but my mum appeared in the doorway, tears falling now. Rachel, she whispered. Please. They're family. I felt my own eyes sting, but my spine stayed straight. Mom, I said. Family isn't supposed to invoice you for love. My plan wasn't dramatic. It was airtight. I gave everyone a resource sheet. Addresses, numbers, instructions. I offered to pay for one session with a legitimate financial counselor. One, as a bridge, not a lifestyle. I offered rides to job interviews for the next 2 weeks scheduled, not demanded. I offered help, applying for work authorization documentation, where appropriate paperwork help, not cash. And I ended everything else. January 1st, I cut the phone plan. At midnight, I downgraded streaming subscriptions. I removed extra drivers from my insurance. I notified my employer's benefits portal that dependents were changing. I changed the Wi-Fi password. I stopped being the quiet utility company that powered everyone's comfort. Predictably, chaos followed. My cousin texted me from a new number. Why is my phone off? My uncle shouted from the hallway. The TV won't connect. My aunt stood in my doorway with her arms crossed and said, like it was a threat, "This is what you want? Us struggling?" I didn't argue. I just handed her the resource sheet again. "It's what you asked for," I said. Independence. The move-out day arrived faster than anyone believed it would. Boxes appeared. Loud sighs. Passive-aggressive comments about how Americans throw family away. Marlon waited until the last hour to pack, like he hoped I'd cave. Then, as they carried their things out, my aunt stopped in my living room and turned around slowly, like she was on a stage. She looked at my Christmas tree still up, still twinkling because I hadn't had the heart to take it down yet, and she said, "You think you won?" I didn't respond. She continued, voice sharp with bitterness. "You didn't win," she said. "You just proved you're cold." I walked to my front door and opened it wide. "No," I said. "I proved I'm done." Marlon's face tightened. "You're going to regret this." I nodded once. "Maybe." Then I added, "But I won't be broke while regretting it." He stared at me like he wanted to hate me more than he did, but couldn't find the angle anymore. Because I wasn't yelling. I wasn't begging. I wasn't chasing. I was just finished. They left. And when the door closed, the silence that followed wasn't lonely. It was clean. The reward didn't come in fireworks. It came in the absence of dread. The first week after they moved out, I woke up and didn't reach for my phone to check who needed me. My grocery bill dropped so dramatically I actually laughed in the checkout line. My house stayed tidy. My couch stayed unclaimed. My sink stayed empty. I sat on my living room floor with a mug of coffee and watched snow fall outside my window like a movie I finally had time to see. Then the calmer, quiet, and inevitable started rolling in. My aunt and uncle learned quickly that America doesn't care about your pride. Rent was real. Deposits were real. Late fees were real. When Marlon's girlfriend couldn't keep up with gig work, they fought. Loudly. Publicly. The kind of fighting that burns bridges fast. They tried to guilt my mum into paying instead, but my mum didn't have my income or my credit score, and for the first time, my mother looked at me like she finally understood the weight I'd been carrying. One evening, she came over with a small bag of groceries and stood awkwardly in my kitchen. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. I didn't stop it. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I know," I said, "but you can stop it now." She nodded slowly, and then she said something I didn't expect. "I thought keeping peace was love," she whispered, "but it was just fear. That was my real reward. Not watching them struggle, watching the pattern break." Months passed. A few relatives tried to come back around when they realized I wasn't a bottomless wallet. One cousin messaged, sweet as syrup, "Hey girl, miss you. We should talk." I didn't reply, because I finally understood. Access to me is earned by respect, not genetics. By spring, I had rebuilt what I'd been bleeding. I paid down debt faster. I saved more. I traveled for a weekend without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I started saying no at work too. I stopped volunteering for unpaid emotional labor everywhere. And in July, when I got a promotion, real salary bump, real recognition, I celebrated with friends who didn't see me as a resource, just as a person. On the next Christmas Eve, a year after the blow-up, I hosted again, smaller, peaceful. My mum came, a couple of close friends came. We ate simple food, we laughed. No one demanded anything. No one called me sponsor, like it was my identity. At one point, I looked at my tree, still small, still twinkling, and I smiled, because it finally felt like a choice, not a performance. And I realized the message I wish someone had tattooed on my heart earlier. You can be generous without being available to exploitation. You can love your family without funding their denial. And you can build a life where your kindness is a gift, not a debit card. That's what I did. Not by becoming cold, by becoming free.